There's a reason so many people spend their entire lives working harder, earning more, doing everything they were told to do, and still never feel financially free. And it's not because they're lazy, it's not because they lack ambition, and it's definitely not because they aren't trying. The real reason is far more uncomfortable. Most people are trapped inside a financial system designed to reward participation, not escape. And the middle class is where that system works best. Because the middle class is stable enough to survive, but pressured enough to keep running. That's the trap. You make enough money to stay afloat, enough to qualify for loans, enough to finance a lifestyle, enough to feel like you're progressing, but not enough to truly step away. So you keep moving, you keep working, you keep maintaining, and eventually, that maintenance becomes your entire financial life. Now here's the dangerous part. From the outside, the middle class often looks successful. There's a house, a car, vacations, a steady paycheck, maybe even retirement contributions. And because those things look stable, people assume stability equals freedom. But stability and freedom are not the same thing. Freedom means your life becomes less dependent on constant effort. Stability often means the opposite. It means you've become efficient at sustaining a system that still requires continuous input. And that distinction changes everything. Now imagine someone making more money than they ever thought they would. At first, life improves dramatically. They move into a better neighborhood. They buy a newer car. They upgrade their lifestyle. And because those upgrades feel rewarding, they assume they're getting ahead. But underneath the surface, something else is happening. Their expenses rise alongside their income. Their obligations expand, their margin disappears, and over time, their entire life becomes dependent on maintaining that higher income level. That's when the pressure begins. Because now they don't just want to keep earning. They have to. The mortgage depends on it. The payments depend on it. The lifestyle depends on it. And suddenly, what once felt like success starts to feel like obligation. This is one of the biggest illusions in modern finance. People mistake access for ownership. Financing something expensive creates the appearance of wealth without necessarily creating actual wealth. And the longer someone stays inside that pattern, the harder it becomes to break out. Because now, their financial structure is built around consumption instead of accumulation. Now, let's go deeper. There are 3 invisible forces that keep most people trapped in the middle class. The first is lifestyle inflation. Every increase in income creates an increase in spending. Not because people are irresponsible, but because upgrading feels natural. You work harder. You earn more. You want life to feel better. That makes sense. But when every raise turns into a larger lifestyle, wealth never forms. Because everything gets absorbed. Now the second force is debt dependency. Most middle-class lifestyles are heavily financed. Cars financed. Homes financed. Furniture financed. Experiences financed. And individually, each payment feels manageable. That's what makes it dangerous. Because when you combine them all together, a massive percentage of future income is already committed before the paycheck even arrives. Which means flexibility disappears. Risk becomes harder. Change becomes uncomfortable. And people stay where they are, even when they're unhappy. Now the third force is time scarcity. This one is the least discussed, but possibly the most important. Most people are so busy maintaining their current life that they never have time to build a different one. They work all day, recover at night, repeat the cycle. And because the routine consumes their energy, they never create leverage outside of it. Years pass this way, sometimes decades. And one day they wake up realizing they spent most of their life surviving a system they thought was leading somewhere else. Now, here's the part that changes everything. Escaping the middle class is not primarily about earning more money. That helps. But by itself, it's not enough. Because if someone keeps the same structure, higher income simply creates a more expensive version of the same cycle. The real shift happens when structure changes. When someone stops using all income for consumption and starts redirecting part of it toward ownership. That's the transition. Consumption to accumulation. Now imagine two families earning similar incomes over 15 years. The first family increases their lifestyle every time their income rises. Better cars, larger house, more spending. From the outside, they look successful, but internally, they're financially fragile. One disruption changes everything. Now the second family lives differently. Not dramatically, not miserably, but intentionally. They maintain margin. They build assets gradually. They avoid unnecessary financial pressure. And year after year, those decisions compound. At first, you can't see the difference. But eventually, the gap becomes enormous. Because one family spent 15 years building appearance, while the other spent 15 years building structure. And structure always wins long-term. Now let's go even deeper. Most people think wealth is about income level. But wealth is actually about dependency level. How dependent are you on your next paycheck? How dependent are you on maintaining your current workload? How dependent are you on constant effort just to sustain your lifestyle? Because dependence creates pressure, and pressure limits freedom. This is why someone earning $200,000 a year can still feel trapped, while someone earning significantly less can feel more financially secure. Because security is not determined only by income. It's determined by structure. Now here's another uncomfortable truth. The middle class is often taught to optimize for comfort instead of ownership. People are encouraged to consume success instead of build it, to look financially successful instead of become financially independent. And those are completely different goals. One creates temporary satisfaction. The other creates long-term control. And control is the real prize. The ability to choose. The ability to step back, the ability to say no, the ability to survive disruptions without panic. That's freedom. Not luxury, not appearance, not status. And once someone understands that clearly, their priorities begin to shift. They stop asking, "What can I buy?" and start asking, "What can I build?" That single question changes financial direction entirely. Because building compounds. Consumption resets. Every time. Now, here's where most people fail. They underestimate how powerful small decisions become over long periods of time. A slightly lower payment, a slightly higher investment, a slightly more intentional lifestyle. Those things don't feel dramatic in the moment, but repeated consistently over 10, 15, 20 years, they create radically different outcomes. That's the power of compounding behavior. Not just compounding money, compounding decisions. Because your financial life is ultimately the accumulation of repeated patterns. And patterns determine destiny. Now imagine reaching a point where your assets begin covering portions of your life. Where not everything depends on your labor. Where some of your progress continues automatically. That's when pressure starts decreasing. That's when flexibility starts increasing. That's when the middle-class trap begins to lose its hold. Not overnight, but progressively. And eventually, the gap between people who build and people who only consume becomes impossible to ignore. One group continues needing more income to sustain life. The other gradually needs less effort to maintain it. And that difference changes everything. Because freedom is not about spending endlessly. It's about reducing dependence. It's about increasing control. It's about creating a life where your future is not entirely tied to your next paycheck. And if you can do that, even gradually, even imperfectly, you begin moving in a direction most people never reach. Not because it's impossible, but because most people never change the structure they're operating inside. And structure determines outcome far more than income alone ever will. And if you're serious about escaping that cycle, building real ownership, and creating long-term financial freedom step by step, subscribe to Smart Money Compounds because this series is designed to help you think differently, build differently, and eventually live differently.